Okay, hi everyone. Finally here. Yep. Yeah, OBS was updating, and I thought, and it was weird because I already updated OBS recently. I guess it didn't update everything. I don't know. It was updating pretty slow too, so I already restarted my computer and everything, and just re-updated it. Now everything's good. So yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah, today's a relaxing day. Let's see. Oh, I should chat. Something right? There we go. There we go. Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know how to check my sound settings very well. I have to be honest with you guys. That's why I always ask. I don't really have a... I don't know. How do you know how to check it? I don't know. So yeah. Kind of hard to judge with the games and stuff. So sometimes I think I should check beforehand sometimes, but you know. Hello dear friend. Hello bands! We're finishing up Alice in Wonderland 9 through 12. So the stream will be around a little over an hour like usual. Yep, so... yeah. At least I just did OBS updating. Anyway, yep. Dun 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 dun. Ba-bum. Dun dun dun. I guess yeah, so I guess before I start, tomorrow is Paper Lily, RPG Maker game, finishing it, and then on Friday is what was it again? Holocure, yeah. I'm playing Holocure. Maybe I'm just gonna use Ina since I'm a Takadachi, so yeah. So what else? Oh yeah, so today we're actually finishing Alice in Wonderland today, like I said. Next stream I'll probably just be reading... Korean folktales, I guess? Yeah, why not? I just dropped by to hear your lovely voice hard to sleep. Yeah, no problem, no problem. Thanks for coming. So yeah. Bum bum bum. Should be reading chapter 9 on top, since we'll be doing that soon. So yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'll just do like what I usually do, just read the book and then just talk a little bit in between as intermissions. Bum bum bum. Yeah, I mean anyone can just touch hat while I'm reading, I don't mind. Anywho. I guess I'll start. Bum 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 bum. It's okay if I listen to till I fall asleep? Yeah, no problem. That's what the streams are meant for, just relaxing times where you just relax and chill, you know? 11:44 AM here. I see. No problem. I also listened to a stream last night too and fell asleep. Don't worry about it. I slept at like 4 yesterday, so yeah. Okay, so to make sure you sleep, I'll start. Fall asleep, no kidding. Okay, let's go. Chapter 9, The Mock Turtle Story. You can't think how glad I am to see you again, you dear old thing, said the Duchess, as she tucked her arm affectionately into Alice's, and they walked off together. Alice was very glad to find her in such a pleasant temper, and thought to herself that perhaps it was only the pepper that had made her so savage when they met in the kitchen. When I'm a duchess, she said to herself, I not in a very helpful tone though. I don't have any pepper in my kitchen at all. Soup does very well without. Maybe it's always pepper that makes people hot-tempered. She went on, very much pleased at having found out a new kind of rule, and vinegar that makes them sour, and chamomile that makes them bitter, and barley sugar, and such things that make children sweet-tempered. I only wish people knew that they wouldn't be so stingy about it, you know? Asking to adjust your scream schedule, just let you know that if you see me here, I'm definitely sleeping and I fall asleep, so I'm sorry. Yeah, no problem, Ben, no problem. I won't adjust my streaming schedule, don't worry about it. Not that I could adjust anyway, because of school and work stuff anyway, so it always had to be around these times in the morning anyway. Yeah, besides that, I know I'm proud of this. It's not like I can change my times anyway. For better, for worse. She had quite forgotten that Duchess by this time and was a little startled when she heard her voice close to her ear. You're thinking about something, my dear, and it makes you forget to talk. I can't tell you just now what the moral of that is, but I shall remember it in a bit. Perhaps it hasn't one, Alice ventured to remark. Tut tut, child, said the Duchess. Everything's got a moral, if only you can find it. And she squeezed herself up, looking to Alice's side as she spoke. Alice did not much like keeping so close to her. First, because the Duchess was very ugly. Wow, Alice. And secondly, because she was exactly the right height to rest her chin upon Alice's shoulder, and it was an uncomfortably sharp chin. However, she did not like to be rude, so she bore it as well as she could. The game's going on rather better now, she said, by way of keeping up the conversation a little. 'Tis so, said the Duchess. The moral of that is, oh, 'tis love that makes the world go around. Somebody said, Alice whispered, that it's done by everyone minding their own business. Oh well, it means much the same thing, said the Duchess, digging her sharp little chin into Alice's shoulder as she added, and the moral of that is, take care of the sense, and the sounds will take care of themselves. How false she is at finding morals in things, Alice thought to herself. I dare say, you're wondering why I don't put my arm around your waist, the Duchess said after a pause. The reason is that I'm doubtful about the temper of your flamingo. Shall I try the experiment? He might bite, Alice cautiously replied, not feeling at all anxious to have the experiment tried. Very true, said the Duchess. Flamingos and mustard both bite. The moral of that is, birds of a feather flock together. Only mustard isn't a bird, Alice remarked. Right as usual, said the Duchess. What a clear way you have of putting things. It's a mineral, I think, said Alice. Of course it is, said the Duchess, who seemed ready to agree to everything that Alice said, even though it's wrong. There's a large mustard mine near here, and the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours. Oh, I know, exclaimed Alice, who had not attended to this last remark. It's a vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is. I quite agree with you, said the Duchess, and the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be. Or, if you like it to put it more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others, that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you have been would have appeared to them to be otherwise. I think I should understand that better, Alice said very politely, if I had written it down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it. That's nothing to what I could say if I chose, the Duchess replied in a pleased tone. Pray, don't trouble yourself to say it any longer than that, said Alice. Oh, don't talk about trouble, said the Duchess. I make you a present of everything I've said as yet. A cheap sort of present, thought Alice. I'm glad they don't give birthday presents like that, but she did not venture to say it out loud. Thinking again, the Duchess asked with another dig of her sharp little chin. I have a right to ask, said Alice sharply, for she was beginning to feel a little worried. Just about as much right, said the Duchess, as pigs have to fly and the... I love hearing your voice at night. No problem, Benz. Thank you, thank you. I guess you'll fall asleep to this voice, which I don't mind. But here, to Alice's great surprise, the Duchess's voice died away, even in the middle of her favorite word moral, and the arm that was linked into hers began to tremble. Alice looked up, and there stood the Queen in front of them, with her arms folded, frowning like a thunderstorm. A fine day, Your Majesty! the Duchess began in a low, weak voice. "Now I give you fair warning," shouted the queen, stamping on the ground as she spoke. "Either you or your head must be off, and about half no time. Take your choice." The Duchess took her choice and was gone in a moment. "Let's go on with the game," the queen said to Alice. Alice was much too frightened to say a word, but slowly followed her back to the croquet ground. The other guests had taken advantage of the queen's absence and were resting in the shade. However, the moment they saw her, they hurried back to the game. The queen merely remarked that a moment's delay would cost them their lives. All the time they were playing, the queen never left off quarreling with the other players and shouting, "Off with his head," or "Off with her head." Those whom she sentenced were taken into custody by the soldiers, who of course had to leave off being archers to do this, so that by the end of half an hour or so there were no archers left, and all the players, except the king, the queen, and Alice, were in custody and under sentence of execution. Yep, all the players in this one. When the queen left off, quite out of breath, and said to Alice, "Have you seen the mock turtle yet?" "No," said Alice. "I don't even know what a mock turtle is." "It's a thing mock turtle soup is made from," said the queen. "I never saw one or heard of one," said Alice. "Come on then," said the queen, "and he shall tell you his history." As they walked off together, Alice heard the king say in a low voice to company generally, "You are all pardoned. Come, that's a good thing," she said to herself, for she had felt quite unhappy at the number of executions the queen had ordered. Yep, so they're actually not deaded. They very soon came upon a griffin, lying fast asleep in the sun. If you don't know what a griffin is, look at the picture. Typically there's a picture in the book, but I haven't uploaded it yet. I haven't uploaded anything. "Up, lazy thing," said the queen, "and take this young lady to see the mock turtle and to hear a story. I must go back and see after some executions I have ordered." And she walked off, leaving Alice alone with the griffin. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but on the whole she thought it would be quite as safe to stay with it as to go after the savage queen. So she waited. The griffin sat up and rubbed its eyes, then watched the queen till she was out of sight, and it chuckled. "What fun," said the griffin, half to itself, half to Alice. "What is the fun?" said Alice. "Why, she," said the griffin. "It's all her fancy that they never execute anybody, you know. Come on." "Everybody says, 'Come on,' here," thought Alice as she went slowly after it. "I never was so ordered about in all my life, never." They had not gone far before they saw the mock turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of rock, and as it came near, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break. She pitied him deeply. "What is his sorrow?" she asked the griffin. The griffin answered very nearly in the same words as before, "It's all his fancy that. He hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Come on." So they went to the mock turtle, looked at them with large eyes full of tears, but said nothing. "This here young lady," said the griffin, "she wants for to know your history, she do." "I'll tell it to her," said the mock turtle in a deep hollow tone. "Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished." So they sat down, and nobody spoke for some minutes. Alice thought to herself, "I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin," but she waited patiently. "Once," said the mock turtle at last with a deep sigh, "I was a real turtle." These words were followed by a very long silence, broken on only by an occasional exclamation of "Look!" from the griffin, and the constant heavy sobbing of the mock turtle. Alice was very nearly getting up and saying, "Thank you, sir, for the interesting story," but she could not help thinking there must be more to come, so she sat still and said nothing. "When we were little," the mock turtle went on at last, more calmly, though still sobbing a little now and then, "we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise." "Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?" Alice asked. "We call him Tortoise because he taught us," says the mock turtle angler. "Really, you are very dull." "You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question," added the griffin, and then both sat in silence and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last the griffin said to the mock turtle, "Drive on, old fellow. Don't be all day about it," and he went on in these words. "I request to be gemmed to be lowered a little, please." "Yeah, no problem, no problem." "Yeah, that's the way I had a pinned message about the sound settings." Bum 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 bum. Hopefully that helped. Bum bum. Hopefully, you don't hear construction. There's a lot of construction next door. I did try to go to the other side of the house, but if you hear it, hopefully you don't. Bum bum bum. Hopefully that helps with the BGM. At last the griffin said to the mock turtle, "Try about, old fellow, don't be all day about it." And he went on in these words. "Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it." Thank you. Welcome, Benz. I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, I'm good. Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it. I never said I didn't, interrupted Alice. You did, said the mock turtle. Hold your tongue, added the griffin, before Alice could speak again. The mock turtle went on. We had the best of educations. In fact, we went to school every day. I've been to a day school too, said Alice. You need to be so proud of all that. With extras? Said the mock turtle a little anxiously. Yes, said Alice. We learned French and music. And washing? Said the mock turtle. Certainly not, said Alice indignantly. Then yours wasn't really a good school, said mock turtle in a tone of great relief. Now at ours, they had at the end of the bill French music and washing extra. We couldn't have wanted it much, said Alice, living at the bottom of the sea. I couldn't afford to learn it, said mock turtle with a sigh. I only took the regular course. What was that? Inquired Alice. Reading and reading, of course, to begin with, the mock turtle replied. And then the different branches of arithmetic: ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. I never heard of uglification, Alice ventured to say. What is it? Griffin lifted up both its paws in surprise. What? Never heard of uglifying? It explained. You know what to beautify is, I suppose. Yes, said Alice doubtfully. It means to make anything prettier. Well then, the griffin went on. If you don't know what to uglify is, you are a simpleton. Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more questions about it, so she turned to the mock turtle and said, What else had you to learn? Well, there was mystery, the mock turtle replied, counting off the subjects on his flappers. Mystery, ancient and modern, lithography, then drawing. The drawing master was an old conjure eel. He used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and faking in coils. I'll be right back. There was a knock at the door. I'll go to the intro screen for a second. Okay, I'm back. It was a delivery from one of my family members. Or for one of my family members. So yeah, we're good. Anyway, let's continue. Now we're good. What was that like? Said Alice. Well, I can't show it to you myself, the mock turtle said. I'm too stiff, and the griffin never learnt it. Hadn't time, said the Griffin. I went to the classics master, though. He was an old crab, he was. I never went to him, the Mock Turtle said, with a sigh. He taught laughing and grief, they used to say. So he did, said the Griffin, signing in his turn, and both creatures hid their faces in their paws. Welcome back. Thank you, Benz. Bum bum bum. And how many hours a day did you do lessons? Said Alice in a hurry to change the subject. 10 hours the first day, said the Mock Turtle, 9 the next, and so on. What a curious plot, exclaimed Alice. That's the reason they're called lessons, the Griffin remarked, because a lesson from day to day. This was quite a new idea to Alice, and she thought it over a little before she made her next remark. Then the 11th day must have been a holiday. Of course it was, said the Mock Turtle. Also, how did you manage on the 12th? Alice went on eagerly. That's enough about lessons, the Griffin interrupted in a very decided tone. Tell her something about the games now. Bum bum bum. And that is the ending of chapter 9. Bum bum bum. Bam. Yes. Well, we've managed to get through chapter 9 with a couple complications, aka the construction. I think it's over. I don't hear anymore, but we'll see about that in like 2 or 3 minutes. Unless I start up again. Like I said, hopefully you don't hear any of it. I did go to the other side of the house, but it's very loud, so... Let's see what else is there today. Let's see. Oh, this week I've been basically doing a bunch of exams, so yeah. But luckily the thing about with just doing exams is that once you're done you can just leave, so the rest of the day. So I have been ending class a little bit earlier, but in exchange I have been sleeping a little bit less, yeah. To be honest, the reason why I was up till 4 last night was because I was just cramming for one of my midterms, because to be honest, it's a class that I don't care about much, so that's why I didn't study it much. So yeah. Other than that, but don't worry about the grades though. I have good grades, if anyone's wondering. So yeah. Then I have an essay writing class with an essay due this week, but I usually just write my essays in like an hour and just turn it in. I usually get a B+ or an A, so yeah. Because I do kind of wing it a little bit, but you know, I know how to wing it and make it look nice. So yeah, we only have 3 more chapters left, and then Alice in Wonderland will be done. Yeah, this book is not very long. I do plan on probably borrowing books from the library, I think, and reading other classics, but not right now. Only because I do have to check which ones are public domain or not. That is the question. I do have a couple of them in my house, but I don't remember which ones I have. I think Sherlock is going into public domain soon. It's either this year or next year, so I'll look into that as well first before I actually read it. Don't want to get destroyed by their estate or anything. The Sherlock copyright is very, very well protected. That's all I'm gonna say. The reason why, for example, when Great Ace Attorney Chronicles came here, I haven't played the game yet, but they had to rename the Sherlock Holmes character into Sherlock Sholmes because they didn't get the licensing rights to actually use the Sherlock Holmes name, which I thought was really funny. So yeah. On that note, I will change the text to chapter 10. Here we go. Now reading chapter 10. Let's see. Hopefully there's no more interruptions, unless there's interruptions from door-to-door people. A lot of them come here because it's a town with actually that's quite a bit of old people living here, that's all I'll say, and families, so a lot of door-to-door salesmen here in this area. Sadly. Anyway. Let's go to chapter 10. Chapter 10. The Lobster Quadrille. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply, and drew the back of one flapper across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak. For a minute or two, sobs choked his voice. Same if he had a bone in his throat, said the Griffin. They set to work, shaking him and punching him in the back. At last, the Mock Turtle recovered his voice. With tears running down his cheeks, he went on again. You may not have lived much under the sea. I haven't, said Alice. and perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster. Alice began to say, I once tasted, checked herself hastily and said, no, never. So you can have no idea the delightful thing a lobster quadrille is. No indeed, said Alice. What sort of a dance is it? Why, said the Gryphon. You first form into a line along the seashore. 2 lines, cried the Mock Turtle. Seals, turtles, salmon, and so on. Then, when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way, that generally takes some time, encouraged the Gryphon. You advance twice, each with a lobster as a partner, cried the Gryphon. Of course, the Mock Turtle said. Advance twice, set to partners, change lobsters, and retire in the same order, continued the Gryphon. Then you know, the Mock Turtle went on, you throw the lobsters, shouted the Gryphon with a bound into the air. As far out to sea as you can. Swim after them, screamed the Gryphon. Turn a somersault into the sea, cried the Mock Turtle, capering widely about. Change lobsters again, yelled the Gryphon, at the top of its voice. Back to land again, and that's all the first figure, said the Mock Turtle. Suddenly dropping his voice, the 2 creatures, who had been jumping about like mad things all this time, sat down again very sadly and quietly, looked at Alice. It must be a very pretty dance, said Alice timidly. Would you like to see a little of it, said the Mock Turtle. Very much indeed, said Alice. Come, let's try your first figure, said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon. You can do without lobsters, you know. Which shall sing? Oh, you sing, said the Gryphon. I've forgotten the words. So they began solemnly dancing round and round Alice, every now and then, treading on her toes when they passed too close, moving their forepaws to mark the time. While the Mock Turtle sang this very slowly and sadly. Will you walk a little faster? Said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They're waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you? Won't you, will you, join the dance? Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you join the dance? You really can really have no notion how delightful it will be. Will take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. The snail replied, too far, and give a look askance. Said he, though whitening kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. Would not, could not, could not join the dance. What matter is how far we go, his scaly friend replied. There's another shore, you know, upon the other side. But further off from England, the nearest to France. Then turn not tail, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you? Will you join the dance? Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you join the dance? Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch, said Alice, feeling very glad that it was over at last. I do so like that curious song about the whiting. Hello, Alucard. We're currently on chapter 10, like it says with the text above me. Yep, we already finished chapter 9. Yep, and we only have chapter 10, 11, 12, and we're done at Alice in Wonderland. Yay! Let's see. And so after that, I'll probably read some, like I said, I'll actually read some Korean folktales. It'll be a very short stream too, probably around an hour long. So I did want to keep these hour longer, between 1 to 2 hours, so yeah. Like I said, the scene of construction is over. I don't think you can hear it in the stream earlier, but so I did go to the other side of the house, but if it is hearable, that's hopefully not. So yeah. I think that was it about the noises. And also, if there's any if I had to go to the door for anything, it might have to be for deliveries and stuff. Hopefully not, but you know. Anyway. Dun 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 dun. Let's see. Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch, said Alice, feeling very glad that's over at last. I do so like that curious song about the whiting. Oh, as to the whitings, said the Mock Turtle, you've seen them, of course. Yes, said Alice. I've often seen them at the Din. She checked herself hastily. I don't know where Din may be, said the Mock Turtle, but if you've seen them so often, of course you know what they're like. I believe so, Alice replied thoughtfully. They have their tails in the mouths, and they're all over crumbs. You're wrong about the crumbs, said the Mock Turtle. Crumbs would all wash off in the sea. But they have their tails in their mouths, and the reason is... Here the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes. Tell about the reason and all that, he said to the Gryphon. I just wanted to say that the art in your thumbnails and your schedule and community posts are really cool. Thank you, thank you. I always have to think of like an idea to do it for. I like Bocchi the Rock, which is an anime that aired last fall, 2022. I decided to just reference it and just draw as myself. Yep, I just think the chibi art from the ending songs are very, very cute. Thank you, thank you. I'm always like thinking like, oh, what art should I draw for them? That's always like what takes the longest time for me before I draw anything. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so I try to draw cute thumbnails, but sometimes I just go for the comedic thumbnails too, like the Hades ones, because I'm like, why not? Suffering can be fun, especially for roguelikes. Dun 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 dun. Bum bum bum. You're wrong about the crumbs, said the Mock Turtle. Crumbs would all wash off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths, and the reason is, he the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes. Tell about the reason and all that, he said to the Griffin. The reason is, said the Griffin, that they would go with the lobsters to the dance. So they got out, thrown to the sea. So they had to fall a long way. They got their tails first in their mouths, so they couldn't get them out again, that's all. Thank you, said Alice. It's very interesting. I never knew so much about a whiting before. I can tell you more than that if you like, said the Griffin. Do you know why it's called a whiting? I never thought about it, said Alice. Why? It does the boots and shoes, the Griffin replied very solemnly. Alice was thoroughly puzzled. Does the boots and shoes? She repeated in a wondering tone. Why, what are your shoes done with, said the Griffin. I mean, what makes them so shiny? Alice looked down at them and considered a little before she gave her answer. They're not done with blacking, I see. Boots and shoes under the sea, Griffin went on in a deep voice. I don't know the whiting. Now you know. And what are they made of? Alice said in a tone of great curiosity. Soles and eels, of course, Griffin replied rather impatiently. Any shrimp could have told you that. If I'd been the whiting, said Alice, whose thoughts were still running on the song, I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please, we don't want you with us. They're obliged to have him with them, the Mock Turtle said. No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise. Wouldn't it really? Said Alice in a tone of great surprise. Of course not, said the Mock Turtle. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I should say, with what purpose? Don't you mean purpose? Said Alice. I mean what I say, the Mock Turtle replied in an offended tone. And Griffin added, Come, let's hear more some of your adventures. I could tell you my adventures, beginning from this morning, said Alice a little timidly. But it's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then. Explain all that, said the Mock Turtle. No, the adventures first, the Griffin in impatient tone. Explanations take such a dreadful time. So Alice began telling them her adventures, the time when she first saw the white rabbit. She was a little nervous about it just at first. Two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide. But she gained courage as she went on. The listeners were perfectly quiet till she got to the part about her repeating, You are old Father William, to the caterpillar, the words all coming different. And then Mock Turtle drew a long breath and said, That's very curious. It's all about as curious as it can be, said the Griffin. It all came different, the Mock Turtle repeated thoughtfully. I should like to hear her try and repeat something now. Tell her to begin. He looked at the Griffin as if he had thought it had some kind of authority over Alice. Stand up and repeat. This is the voice of the sluggard, said the Griffin. Let creatures order one about, and make one repeat lessons, thought Alice. I might as well be at the school at once. However, she got up, began to repeat it. Her head was so full of lobster quadrille that she hardly knew what she was saying. The words came very queer indeed. "'Tis the voice of the lobster,' I heard him declare. "'You have baked me too brown, and must sugar my hair.' The duck with his eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons, and turns out his toes." Later editions continue as follows. "When the sands are all dry, he is gay as a lark, and will take in contemptuous tones of the shark. When the tides rise and sharks are around, his voice has a timid and tremulous sound." "That's different from what I used to say when I was a child," said the Griffin. "Well, I never heard it before," said the Mock Turtle, "but it sounds uncommon nonsense." Alice said nothing. She sat down with her face in her hands, wondering if anything would ever happen in a natural way again. I should like to have it explained, said that Mock Turtle. She can't explain it, said the Griffin hastily. Go on with the next verse. But what about his toes? The Mock Turtle persisted. How could he turn them out with his nose, you know? It's the first position in dancing, Alice said. I was dreadfully puzzled by the whole thing and longed to change the subject. Go on with the next verse, the Griffin repeated impatiently. Begins, I passed by his garden. Alice did not dare to disobey, but she felt sure it would all come wrong, and she sent out in a trembling voice. Passed by his garden, and marked with one eye. The owl and panther were sharing a pie. Later additions continued as follows. The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl had the dish as a share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a boon, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon. The panther received knife and fork with a growl and concluded the banquet. What is the use of repeating all this stuff? The Mock Turtle interrupted. If you don't explain it as you go on, it's by far the most confusing thing I ever heard. Yes, I think you'd better leave off, said the Griffin, and Alice was only too glad to do so. Shall I try another figure of the lobster quadrille? The Griffin went on. Or would you like the Mock Turtle to sing you a song? Oh, a song, please. The Mock Turtle be so kind, Alice replied, so eagerly that the Griffin said in a rather offended tone, Humph. No accounting for tastes. Sing her turtle soup, will you, old fellow? The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and began in a voice sometimes choked with sobs to sing this. Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen, who for such dainties would not stop. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game or any other dish, who would not give all else for 2p pennyworth, only of beautiful soup, pennyworth only of beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup, soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Chorus again, cried the Griffin, and the Mock Turtle had just begun to repeat it, when a cry of, the trial's beginning, was heard at a distance. Come on, cried the Griffin, and taking Alice by the hand, it hurried off without waiting for the end of the song. What trial is it? Alice panted, as she ran, but the Griffin only answered, Come on, and ran the faster, while more and more faintly came, carried on the breeze that followed them, melancholy words, soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. And that was chapter 10. Yay! Remove the number while we're in this intermission part. Oh no, don't delete everything. Okay, we're good. Oh no, we're not reached 11 yet. This. Yeah. Okay, we're good. So that was chapter 10. So we're gonna reach the climax of the book soon, which is a trial part, just like it was in the Disney movie. I'm pretty sure that's probably the most popular version that everybody actually reads. I mean, not reads, watches. I always put read and watch. I mix them up when I talk about, like, for example, like reading manga and watching anime. Sometimes I mix them up when I talk. Actually, quite a bit, actually. Anyway. Yeah, so finish chapter 10. Yeah, so that part was not in the Disney movie at all, so I don't think, from what I remember. It's been a while since I've actually watched the movie, so yeah, so if no one recognizes that part, that's the reason why. Yeah, so chapter 11 and 12, essentially the trial chapters, which is climax of the movie where everyone is accused of stealing the tarts, and then you know what happens in the ending. Yep. So yeah, let's see. What else is there? I was going to say something in my mind, but I kind of forgot what it was though. Let me think. Bum 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 bum. Dun 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 dun. I was gonna say something, but I don't remember. Dun 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 dun. Bum bum bum. Yeah. One day I'll have a live 2D model, but I will slowly make it at some point. So I don't know when. Hopefully I have the time to make it soon. The thing is, I'm also planning to learn how to rig it as well. So once I actually have the entire thing done, plus the rigging, I think that's when I will finally announce it being done. So I haven't started on it at all, but to be honest. Let's see. Yeah, so we have 2 chapters left though. Then we're done for the day. And the book, for that matter. Bum bum. So yeah. I go to chapter 11. There we are. Dun dun dun. Like I said, I will check to see what classics I have in my bookshelf. And I'll check the bookshelves of my other siblings too. They have other books that they personally own themselves, so yeah. Let's see. One book I do have in Korean is The Hunger Games. Though I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to read that. I don't think I'm even allowed to read Hunger Games in general anyway. It's basically a recent book anyway, so public domain will probably not exist until like after I'm dead. Anywho, for that matter. Bum bum bum. Like, because public domains for books go on for very long, but you know, it is to protect the rights of the copyright holders, so it makes complete sense. So yeah. Bum 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 bum. Chapter 11. Who stole the tarts? Wait, did I put the OBS thing? Yeah, I put the text good. Okay, chapter 11. Who stole the tarts? The king and queen of hearts were seated on their throne when they arrived. The great crowd assembled about them. All sorts of little birds and beasts, as well as the whole pack of cards. The knave was standing before them, in chains, the soldier on each side to guard him. Near the king was a white rabbit, with a trumpet in one hand, and a scroll of parchment in the other. In the very middle of the court was a table with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice quite hungry to look at them. I wish to get the trial done, she thought, and hand round the refreshments. There seemed to be no chance of this, so she began looking at everything around her to pass away the time. Yep. Dun 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 dun. Alice had never been in a court of justice before, but she had read about them in books, and she was quite pleased to find that she knew the name of nearly everything there. That's a judge, she said to herself, because of his great wig. The judge, by the way, was a king, and as he wore his crown over the wig, look at the frontispiece if you want to see how he did it. He did not look at all comfortable, and it was certainly not becoming. And that's a jury box, thought Alice, and those 12 creatures, she was obliged to say creatures, you see, because some of them were animals and some were birds. I suppose they are the jurors. She said this last word 2 or 3 times over to herself, being rather proud of it, for she thought, and rightly too, that very few little girls of her age knew the meaning of it at all. However, jurymen would have done just as well. The 12 jurors were all writing very busily on slates. "What are you doing?" Alice whispered to the griffin. "They can't have anything to put down yet, before the trial's begun." "Putting down their names," the griffin whispered in reply, for fear they should forget them before the end of the trial. "Stupid things," Alice began in a loud, indignant voice, but she stopped hastily, for the white rabbit cried out, "Silence in the court!" Then the king put on his spectacles and looked anxiously round to make out who was talking. Alice could see, as well as if she was looking over their shoulders, that all the jurors were writing down stupid things on their slates, and she could even make out that one of them didn't know how to spell stupid, and that he had to ask his neighbor to tell him. A nice middle of their slates will be before the trial's over, thought Alice. One of the jurors had a pencil that squeaked. This, of course, Alice could not stand, and she went round the court and got behind him, and very soon found an opportunity of taking it away. She did it so quickly that the poor little juror, it was Bill Lizard. Poor Bill. Bill gets the short end of the stick in this book, could not make out at all what had become of it. So after hunting all about for it, he was obliged to write that with one finger for the rest of the day, and this was of very little use as it left no mark on the slate. "Herald, read the accusations," said the king. On this, the white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpets, and then rolled a parchment scroll and read as follows. "Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts all on a summer day. Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away." "Consider your verdict," the king said to the jury. "Not yet, not yet," Rabbit hastily interrupted. "That's a great deal to come before that. Call the first witness," said the king. The white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet and called out, "First witness." The first witness was a hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. "I beg pardon, your majesty," he began, "for bringing these in, but I hadn't quite finished my tea when I was sent for." "You ought to have finished," said the king. "When did you begin?" The hatter looked at the March Hare, who had followed him into the court arm in arm with the Dormouse. 14th of March, I think it was," he said. 15th, said the March Hare. 16th, added the Dormouse. "Write that down." And the king said to the jury. The jury eagerly wrote down all 3 dates on their slates, and then added them up, reduced the answer to shillings and pence. "Take off your hat," the king said to the hatter. "It isn't mine," said the hatter. "Stolen!" the king exclaimed, turning to the jury, who instantly made a memorandum of the fact. I keep them to sell," the hatter added as explanation. "I have none of my own, I'm a hatter." Here the queen put on her spectacles and began staring at the hatter, who turned pale and fidgeted. "Give your evidence," said the king, "and don't be nervous or I'll have you executed on the spot." See, even the king is like not the best guy, to be honest. This did not seem to encourage the witness at all. He kept shifting from one foot to the other, looking uneasily at the queen, and in his confusion, he bit a large piece out of his teacup instead of the bread and butter. Hopefully he didn't ruin his mouth that way. Just as this moment, Alice felt a very curious sensation, which puzzled her a good deal until she made out what it was. She was beginning to grow larger again. She thought at first she would get up and leave the court, but on second thoughts, she decided to remain where she was as long as there was no room for her. As there was room for her, I mean. "I wish you wouldn't squeeze so," said the Dormouse who was sitting next to her. "I can hardly breathe." "I can't help it," said Alice very meekly. "I'm growing." "You have no right to grow here," said the Dormouse. "Don't talk nonsense," said Alice more boldly. "You know you're growing too." "Yes, but I grow at a reasonable pace," said the Dormouse. "Not in that ridiculous fashion." And he got up very sulkily and crossed over to the other side of the court. All this time the queen had never left off staring at the hatter, and just as the Dormouse crossed the court, she said to one of the officers of the court, "Bring me a list of the singers in the last concert," on which the wretched hatter trembled so that he shook off both his shoes. "Give your evidence," the king repeated angrily, "or I'll have you executed, whether you're nervous or not." "My poor man, your majesty," the hatter began in a trembling voice, "and I hadn't begun my tea, not above a week or so." "And what with the bread and butter getting so thin and the twinkling of the tea?" "Twinkling of the what?" said the king. "Began with the tea," the hatter replied. "Of course, twinkling begins with the tea," said the king sharply. "Do you take me for a dunce? Go on." "I'm a poor man," the hatter went on, "and most things twinkled after that, only the March Hare said—" "I didn't," the March Hare interrupted in a great hurry. "You did," said the hatter. "I deny it," said the March Hare. "He denies it," said the king. "Leave out that part." "Well, at any rate," the Dormouse said. The hatter went on, looking anxiously around to see if he would deny it too. So the Dormouse denied nothing, being fast asleep. "After that," continued the hatter, "I cut some more bread and butter." "What did the Dormouse say?" one of the jury asked. "That I can't remember," said the hatter. "You must remember," remarked the king, "or I'll have you executed." The miserable hatter dropped his teacup and bread and butter and went down on one knee. "My poor man, your majesty," he began. "You're a very poor speaker," said the king. Here one of the guinea pigs cheered, but was immediately suppressed by the officers of the court. As that is a rather hard word, I'll just explain how it's done. They had a large canvas bag which tied up the mouth with strings. Into this they slipped the guinea pig, head first, and then sat upon it. Sad. Guinea pigs are cute. So one thing I guess I'll note about the book is that it's both the king and the queen basically being bad rulers, not just a queen, like it is in the Disney movie. I'll cover the Disney movie, I guess, since, like I said, I think pretty sure that's where most people know about the story. "I'm glad I've seen that done," thought Alice. "I've so often read in newspapers at the end of the trials." There was some attempts at applause which was immediately suppressed by the officers of the court. Never understood what it meant till now. "If that's all you know about it, you may stand down," continued the king. "I can't go no lower," said the hatter. "I'm on the floor as it is." "Then you may sit down," the king replied. Here the other guinea pig cheered and was suppressed. "Come, that finished the guinea pig," said Alice. "Now I shall get on better." "I'd rather finish my tea," said the hatter with an anxious look at the queen, who was reading the list of singers. "You may go," said the king. The hatter hurriedly left the court without even waiting to put his shoes on. "And just take his head off outside," the queen added to one of the officers. The hatter was out of sight before the officer could get to the door. "Yay, he lives." "Call the next witness," said the king. The next witness was the Duchess's cook. She carried the pepper box in her hand, and Alice guessed who it was, even before she got into the court. The people near the door began sneezing all at once. "Give your evidence," said the king. "Shan't," said the cook. The king looked anxiously at the White Rabbit, who said in a low voice, "Your majesty must cross-examine this witness." "Well, if I must, I must," the king said, with a melancholy air, and, after folding his arms and frowning at the cook, till his eyes were nearly out of sight, he said in a deep voice, "What are tarts made of?" "Pepper, mostly," said the cook. "Treacle," said a sleepy voice behind her. Collar that dormouse, the queen shrieked out. Behead that dormouse. Turn that dormouse out of court. Suppress him. Pinch him. Off with his whiskers. For some minutes, the whole court was in confusion, getting the dormouse turned out. And by the time they had settled down again, the cook had disappeared. Oh, the cook lives too. Never mind, said the king with an air of great relief. Call the next witness. He added in an undertone to the queen. Really, my dear, you, the convict examined the next witness. It quite makes my forehead ache. Alice watched the white rabbit as he fumbled over the list, feeling very curious to see what the next witness would be like. For they hadn't gotten much evidence yet, she said to herself. Imagine her surprise when when the white rabbit read out, at the top of his shrill little voice, the name Alice. Bum 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 bum. And that is the end of chapter 11. Now we only have one more chapter left and we're actually done with the story already. Bum bum bum. I'm drinking some water for a second. I'll turn off my mic. Yep. And then now is the true climax, I guess. I guess I could say it was the build-up to the first part, climax part 1. Now it's climax part 2. And also the last chapter, which is just called Alice's Evidence. So yeah. Yeah, as you can see, not much people actually die, or die at all in this book. Because either the king pardons them in the earlier chapter, and they all run away during the commotion. I guess it just shows how incompetent they are. Anyway, yeah. So when I first wrote this book, I think I was like 8 or 9. I think. I can't remember. I read a lot of like really random books, to be honest. Bum bum. In terms of, I guess, the reason why I like horror, I really liked reading Ghost. I did like I don't know. I keep stuttering. Okay. Hopefully I don't stutter anymore. Yeah, the reason why I like horror though, because I read Goosebumps as a kid. I mean, if you know, they're just very, pretty short books of just scary stories. To be honest, most of them are not scary, even as a kid. It's not because of the concept ideas. Now, there are a couple I would say are kind of scary, but kind of it. I've not watched any of the movies though, like the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black in it. No, I didn't watch any of that stuff because I don't go to the movie theaters that much. So yeah. Yeah, from a young age, my parents really encouraged us to read. So there's a library that's really close by to where I used to live. So I'll talk about it because, like I said, I don't live there anymore, so I'm good. Yeah, so the library would literally be a couple blocks away. So my parents, usually when they had to work or whatever, they would just send me and this is all before all of us were in high school essentially, / middle school. My parents would send us there to the library in the morning, and they would basically pick us up somewhere around like the afternoonish, usually when they were done working. So I was there sometimes, so I would be there all day at times, and so that's why I read a lot of books and manga because they had their own manga section there. Because that's where I read a lot of books. I was also got into like Bleach and like Naruto and stuff, and I initially watched a couple episodes of Naruto, and then I got into actually reading the manga. So yeah, the library would actually try to update as much as possible the book section they had. So in terms of the manga and the regular books. So yeah, I did read some books over and over again a lot though. So yeah, books for example, one book series that they had, which made me more obsessed with Pokemon at the time, was that they had a Pokemon special manga at the time actually. Up to they had it for the Gen 1 and Gen 2, yeah. Because of that I was like, oh, I'm so obsessed with Pokemon because it's like so cool. But to be honest, it's actually a bit violent. Let's just say that Pokemon special manga is a lot darker. It's more violent, especially at the beginning works. But yeah, other than that. So yeah, we'll be reading chapter 12 now. After that, I'll just talk a bit more, and then we'll probably just end there. The stream, yeah, and that'll be the ending of this reading series for Alice in Wonderland. said, I'll probably do a Korean book next, and then or a couple Korean books for that matter. After that, I'll probably I don't know. I haven't decided the book after that. Well, I'll get to that point when we get to that point, which is like some weeks from now, I think. So yeah. Anyway, let's start chapter 12. Oh wait, did I do the OBS? I always forget for some reason. Okay, I did. Okay, I did put the text. Okay, we're good. Chapter 12. Alice's evidence. Here, cried Alice, quite forgetting in the flurry at the moment how large she had grown in the last few minutes. She jumped up in such a hurry that she tipped over the jury box with the edge of her skirt, upsetting all the jurymen onto the heads of the crowd below, and there they lay sprawling about, reminding her very much of a globe of goldfish she accidentally upset the week before. "Oh, I beg your pardon," she exclaimed in a tone of great dismay, began picking them up again, as quickly as she could, with the accident of the goldfish kept running in her head, as she had a vague sort of idea that they must be collected at once and put back into the jury box, or they would die. Yes, that's how fish die. "The trial cannot proceed," said the king in a very grave voice, "until all the jurymen are back in their proper places. All," he repeated with a great emphasis, looking hard at Alice as he said so. Alice looked at the jury box and saw that in her haste, she put the lizard and head downwards, and the poor little thing was waving its tail about in a melancholy way, being quite unable to move. Poor Bill. She soon got it out again and put it right. "Not that it signifies much," she said to herself. "I should think it would be quite as much use in the trial one way up as the other." Good Alice dissing other creatures. As soon as the jury had a little recovered from the shock of being upset, and their slates and pencils had been found and handed back to them, they set to work very diligently to write out a history of the accident. Also the lizard, who seemed too much overcome to do anything, stood with his mouth open, gazing up into the roof of the court. Poor Bill, he's like shocked. "What do you know about this business?" the king said to Alice. "Nothing," said Alice. "Nothing whatever?" persisted the king. "Nothing whatever," said Alice. "That's very important," the king said, turning to the jury. They were just beginning to write this down on their slates when the White Rabbit interrupted. "Unimportant, your majesty, means of course," he said in a very respectful tone, but frowning and making faces at him as he spoke. So even the rabbit doesn't like him, and Rabbit mocks everyone too. "Unimportant, of course I meant," the king hastily said, and went on to himself in an undertone. "Important, unimportant, unimportant, important," as if he were trying which word sounded best. Some of the jury wrote down important, and some wrote unimportant. Alice could see this, as she was near enough to look over their slates. "It doesn't matter a bit," she thought to herself. At this moment, the king, who had been looking for some time busily writing in his notebook, cackled out, "Silence!" and read out from his book, "Rule 42, all persons more than a mile high to leave the court." Everybody looked at Alice. I'm not a mile high," said Alice. "You are," said the king. "Nearly 2 miles high," added the queen. "Well, I shan't go at any rate," said Alice. "Besides, that's not a regular rule. You invented it just now." It's the oldest rule in the book," said the king. "Then it ought to be number 1, said Alice. The king turned pale and shut his notebook hastily. "Consider your verdict," he said to the jury in a low, trembling voice. "There's more evidence to come yet, please, your majesty," said the White Rabbit, jumping up in a great hurry. "This paper has just been picked up." "What's in it?" said the queen. "I haven't opened it yet," said the White Rabbit, "but it seems to be a letter written by the prisoner to somebody." "It must have been that," said the king, "unless it was written to nobody, which isn't unusual, you know." "Who is it directed to?" said one of the jurymen. "It isn't directed at all," said the White Rabbit. "In fact, there's nothing written on the outside." He unfolded the paper and, as he spoke, and added, "It isn't a letter at all. After all, it's a set of verses." "Are they in the prisoner's handwriting?" asked another of the jurymen. "No, they're not," said the White Rabbit. "That's the queerest thing about it." The jury all looked puzzled. "He must have imitated somebody else's hand," said the king. The jury all brightened up again. "Please, your majesty," said the knave, "I didn't write it, and they can't prove I did. There's no name signed at the end." "If you didn't sign it," said the king, "well, it makes the matter worse. You must have meant some mischief, or else you'd have signed your name like an honest man." There was a general clapping of hands at this. It was the first really clever thing the king had said that day. Ain't that sad? "That proves his guilt," said the queen. "That proves nothing of the sort," said Alice. "Why, I don't even know what they're about." "Read them," said the king. The White Rabbit put on his spectacles. "Where shall I begin?" "Please, your majesty," he asked. "Begin at the beginning," the king said gravely, "and go on till you come to an end, then stop." These were the verses the White Rabbit read. "They told me you had been to her. I mentioned you to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. He sent them word I had not gone. We know it to be true. If she should push the matter on, what would become of you? I gave her 1, I gave him 2. You give us 3 or more. I will return from him to you, though they were mine before. If I or she should chance to be involved in this affair, I trust you to set them free, exactly as we were. My notion was that you had been, before she had this fit, an obstacle that came in between him and ourselves and it. Don't let him know she liked them best, for this must ever be a secret kept from all the rest, between yourself and me." And that is the end of it. "That's the most important piece of evidence we've heard yet," said the king, rubbing his hands. "So now let the jury—" "Any one of them can explain it," said Alice. She had grown so large in the last few minutes that she wasn't a bit afraid of interrupting him. "I'll give him 6 pence. I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it." The jury all wrote down on their slates, "She doesn't believe there's an atom of meaning in it," and none of them attempted to explain the paper. "There's no meaning in it," said the king. "That saves a world of trouble, you know, as we needn't try to find any, and yet I don't know," he went on, spreading out the verses on his knee, looking at them with one eye. "I seem to see some meaning in them after all. Said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you?" he added, turning to the knave. The knave shook his head sadly. "Do I look like it?" he said, which he certainly did not, being made entirely of cardboard. "All right so far," said the king, and he went on muttering over the verses to himself. "We know it to be true. That's a jury, of course. I gave her 1. They gave him 2. Why, that must be what he did with the tarts, you know." "But it goes on, they all returned from him to you," said Alice. "Why, there they are," said the king triumphantly, pointing to the tarts on the table. "Nothing can be clearer than that. Then again, where she had this fit—" "Never had fits, my dear, I think," he said to the queen. "Never," said the queen fiercely, throwing an inkstand at the lizard as she spoke. Unfortunate little Bill had left off writing on his slate with one finger, as they found it made no mark, but he now hastily began using the ink that was trickling down his face as long as it lasted. Poor Bill. Then, words don't fit you," said the king, looking round the court with a smile. There was a dead silence. "It's a pun," the king added in an offending tone. Everybody laughed. The jury considered this verdict, the king said, for about the 20th time that day. No, said the queen. "Sentence first, verdict afterwards." "Stuff and nonsense," said Alice sadly. "The idea of having the sentence first." "Hold your tongue," said the queen, turning purple. "I won't," said Alice. "Off with her head," the queen shouted at the top of her voice. Nobody moved. "Who cares for you?" said Alice. She had grown to her full size by this time. "You're nothing but a pack of cards." At this time, the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank, with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees upon her face. "Wake up, Alice, dear," said her Alice. "Why, what a long sleep you've had." "Oh, I've had such a curious dream," said Alice. She told her sister as well, as she could remember them. All these strange adventures of hers that you have just been reading about, and when she had finished, her sister kissed her and said, "It was a curious dream, dear, certainly. But now run into your tea. It's getting late." So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran, as well as she might, what a wonderful dream it had been. Bum 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 bum. And we only have a little bit left, 4 paragraphs to be exact, or 5, I mean. I can't count for some reason. The sister sat still, just as she had left her, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun, and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming, after a fashion, and this was her dream. First she dreamed of little Alice herself. Once again the tiny hands were clasped upon her knee, and the bright eager eyes looking up into hers. She could hear the very tones of her voice, and see that queer little toss of her head, keep back the wandering hair that would always get into her eyes. And still as she listened, or seemed to listen, the whole place around her became alive, the strange creature of her little sister's dreams. The long grass rustled, the feet of the white rabbit hurried by. The frightened mouse splashed his way through the neighboring pool. She could hear the rattle of the teacups. The March Hare and his friends shared their never-ending meal. The shrill voices of the queen, ordering off her unfortunate guests to execution. Once more the pig baby was sneezing on the Duchess's knee, while plates and dishes crashed around it. Once more the shriek of the griffin, the squeaking of the little lizard's slate pencil, the choking of the suppressed guinea pigs, filled the air, mixed up with the distant sobs of the miserable mock turtle. So she sat on, with closed eyes, and half believed herself in Wonderland. Though she knew she had to open them again, and all would change to dull reality. The grass would be only rustling in the wind, and the pool rippling into the waves of the reeds. The rattling teacups would change to tinkling sheep bells, the queen's shrill cries to the voice of the shepherd boy, the sneeze of the baby, the shriek of the griffin. All the other queer noises would change, she knew, to the confused clamor of the busy farmyard. The lowing of the cattle in the distance would take place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. Lastly, she pictured to herself how the same little sister of hers would, the aftertime, be herself a grown woman, and how she would keep, through all her riper years, the simple and loving heart of her childhood. Now she would gather about her other children, and make their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago, and how she would fill with all of their simple sorrows, and find a pleasure in all their simple joys, remembering her own child life and the happy summer days. The end. Yay, 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 yay! You're now finished with the book. The end. I'll write it. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. Oops. I pressed cancel. There we go. The end. Bam. We are done. I like this book a lot. It's very simple, to the point. It's nonsensical, but I don't know, I like it being nonsensical, to be honest. Bum bum ba bum 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 bum. So yeah. Dun 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 dun. Do 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 do. Let me just check something for a second. Okay, we're good. Yeah, so this was Alice in Wonderland. It's only like said, but the reason why I also chose it as the first book because it is only 12 chapters, which is very low compared to a lot of other classics. So yeah. That is the thing about it. Let's see. What else would I say about this book? You know, I do like how influential this book is as well. It spawned like a lot of like, you know, some of the pop culture, the Tim Burton movie. To be honest, I just find that movie okay. I don't dislike it though. To be honest, but it's definitely not my favorite, if I had to be honest. I just like the Disney version more. I just don't like how, I guess, grim and dark the actual movie is. Let me pick up another song since we're in the ending one. Bum, bum, bum. This one. Yes, this one's cuter. Not cuter, more different for the ending chat song. So yeah. Let's see. Bum bum bum. Let's see, yeah. Like I said, I honestly don't care much for the Tim Burton book, if I had to be honest. So I don't dislike it per se, but I do admit, yes, I do admit that I don't. It's not my favorite at all. So I mean, it has to do with the aesthetics of the story more than the story of it itself. To me, when I think of Alice in Wonderland, I don't think of it as something being really dark, you know? So yeah. I actually did watch the movie in theaters when it came out because my friends really back then really wanted to watch it, but I was just like, okay, I guess. So yeah, let's see. In terms of the book itself, I guess my favorite character that I always remember when I read Alice in Wonderland is of course Alice herself and the Mad Hatter Tea Party / the Cheshire Cat. So those are the characters I remember the most, as well as like the most I think aesthetically. I just like how fun designs can be and stuff like that. I also like it when gacha games do Alice in Wonderland themed outfits. Just saying. I just find it cute. Let's see. Yeah, so like I said, so the rest of this week, I said the schedule is always on the community page. There might be a couple times where I don't do a schedule, but I think there'll just be special days where there's only like 1 or 2 streams, I think, for the week. So if there's at least 3 or 4 streams, I will try to do a schedule for it. So yeah. And thanks for liking the art of the streams too. Thumbnail art and stuff in general. Yeah, for my thumbnail art, I just like to use the official art in the background and then just draw myself overlaid on top of it, to be honest. So yeah. See. I also plan to do some more stuff with art maybe later on in my VTubing career, I guess. For example, I really want to do like a choose your own adventure story for maybe a short manga series or something where you guys will choose what happens. We'll choose like what the characters do next in a or something. Actually, turn off the microphone there. So yeah, I haven't decided how it's gonna work or anything yet, which is why I haven't done it yet. That's a problem. Yeah. I will say one thing about being a VTuber in these 3-4 months now is the fact that one thing I like to do is the fact that I did notice my art improving in general, which is nice. It's been a while since I've actually been able to draw pretty regularly, to be honest. Once everything was settled down, that is. So yeah. Let's see. I will be setting up tomorrow's stream probably like in like 3 to 4 hours. The waiting room for it, I mean. I don't know when the thumbnail will be done though. I do have it mostly ready, but I have some stuff to do during the day, so I'll get it done when I get it done. Anywho, tomorrow was Continue Project Cat, yes. I was thinking, I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, yes. Anywho, yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I'm gonna actually end stream now. So yeah. Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun.